Hello, welcome back to Sailing Northern Breeze. We're doing something a little bit different this week. We're taking you to the Toronto Boat Show with us. This is the first of a few presentations that we made. This one saying what it took for us, not necessarily for you, but what we did to go from sailing the Great Lakes to becoming blue water sailors. Settle in. Hope you enjoy the show.
My lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing.
Welcome. I am Marie, and this is Aaron, my husband, and together we sail a 42-foot Baltic sailboat. We are here to talk about how we went from sailing on Lake St. Clair in a 27-foot sailboat to sailing on a 42-foot sailboat across the ocean. Given this presentation a couple times, and I'd like to start it out a little differently this time. We'd like it to be a little more interactive. So we'll tell you in this presentation what we think is important about a boat, how you prepare and mentally and physically. But your apprehension is all about you and your own self. So we'd like to know questions as we go along, right?
Like throwing off the lines in St. John's, knowing we weren't going to see land for at least 6 days was very difficult because we'd never done that before. But my preparation is very different than what it took to get her there. So everybody's different, right?
So you might have questions or suggestions or whatever as we go through, and please just raise your hand and we'll be glad to stop and talk about it. This presentation is not that long. We have plenty of time for discussion. Okay? All right. So, as I said, we've been sailing. I actually got my, I actually stepped foot on a sailboat for the first time in 2015, 10 years ago.
And 7 years later, she was across the Atlantic.
Some might say that was crazy. I might agree with them a little bit, but...
Where the Titanic went.
Okay, we could couch it really stupid, but we could also make it very adventurous. And our little Ouray, our 27-foot Mirage, did a tremendous amount of boosting my confidence. So we were on Lake St. Clair, we sailed down into Lake Erie, we sailed up into Lake Huron on this little 27-foot Mirage, our Ouray. And we're both engineers, so we enjoy fixing our boats and figuring out what's what on them, and we employed that to build confidence to go further.
So we moved up from the 1976 boat to a really new 1982 boat. And that's what we have now.
By the way, that felt like we had a brand new boat, in case you're wondering. Our 1976 boat had an ice box. Okay, so. All right. So our adventures. So we picked the boat up in 2019 in Rhode Island, and we sailed it back to Lake Erie, and that's where we stayed through COVID, and we did some work on her. And in that work, we got very intimate with our boat, right? We learned things about her, what was good, what was bad, and eventually we sailed across the ocean. And last year we sailed over here.
The red line, around the Baltic Sea.
Around the Baltic Sea. So,
which, by the way, is a lot like sailing on the Great Lakes. Sharp waves, not big swells like the ocean. It's just a big Great Lake.
And so that brings up another point. When we brought the Northern Breeze back into Lake Erie, I was very used to a 27-foot Mirage that behaved very well on the lakes. The Northern Breeze, the Baltic, was horrid. She just was a hobby horse and bucked continuously. She was not designed for short, square waves that are typical of the lakes. And I told him, we get her out back into the saltwater. If she doesn't behave, we're selling her, because I am not riding this boat across the ocean.
That's the first time we were going to sell it.
Yeah, there's been more. So your first impressions aren't always the lasting impressions, because she has been outstanding in the ocean. Okay, let's keep going. So what I'm going to talk about today is the courage that it took to decide to go from sailing in Lake St. Clair on our little 27-foot bathtub that I used to drink wine on after dinner, or after work, to throwing out the lines in St. John's.
This is St. John's Harbor in front of the keg.
What we prepared to do.
By the way, we're not ready to go there yet.
What we prepared to do from a boat perspective as well as our perspective, how we planned the journey, how we chose the boat we chose, and then how we got some skills, right? Other than taking our Ouray out for the very first sail ever and having every slide on the mast break except the top one and the bottom one. So we've had those catastrophic things that taught us and brought confidence, and then overall the risk assessment for crossing an ocean. All right, courage. Right there, for me, and by the way, when we picked our boat up in 2019 in Rhode Island, we had a gentleman from Topsail in Kingston was going to certify us for RYA, and he joined us on our boat, and we set sail from Newport basically to Washington, Port Washington.
Yeah, almost New York.
Right.
It was a 5-day course, RYA, day skipper, coastal cruiser.
Right. And he said, on day 2, he said, you two are completely opposite. Aaron, I'll throw anything at you and you'll just do it.
You just figure it out.
Right. Marie, if I don't bring you along, you're going to sit down and you're not doing nothing. And I'm like, you are so right. Right? I am not going to sit there and just be told to go and dance off the front of the boat. We're going to inch our way up there. So we learn differently and we experience things differently and we grow confidence differently. So courage for us is different. For me, it's getting my ability and learning my abilities. It is having confidence in my crew of one, right? It's having confidence in my boat, and it's also reading and learning as much information as I possibly can about the things I'm worried about. So prepared.
Iceberg, harbor in Nanartalik, Greenland. They can't come in, by the way. Those guys, they ground out there. They're too deep, but they break and they cab off. And their babies coming in, banging your boat.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a funny anecdotal story there. We crossed from St. John's to Nanartalik, Greenland, and it was a fog the whole way for 6 days. We were in a soup can, and we get a call on an email from our weather router who says, in front of you, this is day 6, or no, 180 miles offshore. He says, you have to stop. There is a huge storm in front of you, 20 to 25 foot waves, and
40 to 50 knot seas. So we're 180 miles from Greenland, out in the North Atlantic.
tired.
Stop. Stop.
Tired of being in a soup can, just tired of the whole thing. And he says, stop. It was the best thing that we ever did. The sun came out. It was beautiful. Yes.
What time of the year?
It was late June.
So we hired a weather router, which is one of the things we'll get to. Chris Parker is a common name. He's got a staff, and he's a meteorologist. For $250 back then, 2 years ago, they give you 10 personal forecasts for your boat and your route.
Great asset. A brilliant asset.
He's told us, we said, we're going to go between Labrador and Newfoundland, and we're going to then go up. We call him in January. He said, don't do that. What do you mean don't do that? That's the shortest route. It's only 4 days across. He said, because between Labrador and Newfoundland, we'll be full of ice.
Coming down the Labrador Current.
And he was right, and he knew that, so we hired him. So then we left from St. John's, which made it a longer trip. He said, get there by the middle of June, and I will tell you when to go. So that's what we did.
So,
Longest days of the year, by the way, that's why we did it then. You get 24 hours of daylight, you can see the icebergs.
so we set out, and we hove to for 36 hours. We get back get the boat going.
4 o'clock in the morning, he sends us a text. Okay, go.
Go now. So,
All right, it's daylight, let's go.
yeah, it was daylight all the time, which was brilliant as well. So he's downstairs down in the cabin sleeping, and we're getting close to the Greenland coast, and I see a chunk of ice, and I'm like, oh no, here come the icebergs, right? Okay, I have to admit it was about the size of that projector, but I had no idea what I was supposed to expect or how deep it was. You know, they say you only see a third. So I'm hollering at him, come up, come up. He's like, how big is it? I'm like, it's this big. He's like, just sail. Just sail. About 12 hours later, we're coming into the harbor at Nanortalik, and I'm on the bow. It's foggy, you can't see anything. And I'm like, iceberg. And he goes,
So we're motoring in at 3 knots because it's foggy.
yeah.
Oh, by the way,
yes.
the GPS quit, so we're using our phones now.
Right, and the GPS satellite signals are really bad up there. They only update like every 6 minutes
There's not many satellites out
because
there.
there's not many
customers.
satellites. Anyways, I'm like, iceberg, and he goes, I know. There's one right here. There's one right. I'm like, no,
The size
iceberg.
of a car. It's no big deal, right?
In front of us, 6 or 8 stories high, was the biggest iceberg I had ever seen in my life, and I thought I was going to be
Ahead,
like
in the
Coyote into the front of that iceberg before he turned the boat. He's like, which way? I'm like, it doesn't matter, just turn. So, experience. So we're going to talk about safety on the boat, your physical and emotional health on the boat, and the knowledge you can gain out there through various avenues. We'll start with hardware. So there
This
are,
is how I got comfortable to go, was the hardware. Like if something bad happened, we were going to be okay because I trusted the equipment. That was different than what she needed to get comfortable.
yeah, equipment fails. We're both engineers. Did I mention that when we started? Yeah, my confidence in equipment is only as good as the user. But we did have what I thought was all of the right hardware. By the way, the highlighted stuff as we got across the ocean. Now we're kind of coastal sailing, but not really. We're talking about crossing seas, right? The North Sea, the Baltic Sea. A little different, but not dramatically different. But I think that the things, this is my opinion, not his, highlighted in yellow are things that you absolutely need for ocean going. You could debate whether you need them for the sea, going across seas. So life raft, man overboards, tested that this year. It works.
It's a VHF signal for every boat within 25 miles. If you go in the water, it's an alarm.
Yep. E-PERBs,
Which
right?
is the satellite one. It's the Coast Guard.
Personal safety beacons that you
Another
carry
satellite.
in your safety slings, jacklines, and tethers. That's something that's very difficult to get used to using on a boat, but it bears practicing.
The rule out in the ocean was if you're on deck by yourself, you're tied off.
Right. Of course, life jackets. Survival suits, because the water was so cold up there, we bought survival suits. Safety nets, just to keep things from rolling off the dock or off the deck. Cockpit enclosure. So when we got to St. John's, I built a little pup tent for our cockpit because we have 2 cockpits. So you couldn't have a full enclosure. There's no way to do that. The traveler comes up the middle.
So that was in that last picture.
Communication hardware, Iridium Go. Now there's Starlink. There wasn't Starlink when we crossed. Predict Wind. Did you use the mic? People can't hear me? Okay. Predict Wind, VHF, AIS radar. All of the normal things, right? Now when you're crossing seas, a lot of times the cell signals are so good that you really don't need satellite link.
For
You
like
can
40 miles out, you're probably good.
Yeah.
Medical supplies, I go into my doctor, I got prescriptions to take with us. So I'm a ski patroller, so I can set, if you break your arm, I can put you in a sling and put a splint on it. But it can't help with the pain. It can't help with a burn. And most burns camping come from cooking. And this is camping. And most injuries camping come from cooking. And infections, if you get an infection. I'm at least 3 days from shore on this thing, right? So if you get an infection 3 days from shore, that's not good. So I went to my doctor, I said, this is what I'm doing. So he gave me a prescription for painkillers, for steroidal burn creams, and antibiotics. Here you go.
So I did get
we
hurt.
have prescriptions on board.
Right. I got significantly injured on this trip. So one thing to be aware when there's only 2 of you on board, the use of pain medication is really mitigated because you have to be alert for somebody else, right? One person can't sail a boat for hours and hours. They do all the time, but it's not as safe.
It's a safety.
For sure.
So she fell going in, we got hit by rogue waves. She fell when we were going from the Faroe Islands into Scotland, broke her shoulder blade, couple ribs, and her thumb. And she was not helping, she's down below. Breathe, there's a storm coming, you gotta get up and help me, but she couldn't. So then you gotta make an assessment, do I call the Coast Guard to come and get her? We're 150 miles from Scotland. They could probably come and get her, right? I said, I'll just sail through the night all the way to Scotland by myself. This was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She actually came up about 11 p.m. and did a shift in an hour, so I got an hour's sleep.
Yeah, whatever I could do. The biggest problem was with the shoulder blade and ribs broken, it was hard to get out of the
Stairs.
cabin to get upstairs because we don't have a nice slope to our stairs. It's like climbing a ladder. That was the most difficult. Plans for shifts, right? Shifts, food, rest, and recovery. The shifts are different on a boat when you have the midnight sun. So that's a brilliant thing, by the way, to be able to see at some level the status on the water all night long. You don't get that after you get below like the 45th parallel, maybe?
Oh, it's even at 60, 56.
Okay. Anyways, so we practiced shifts before we actually started our expedition. I'm a kind of night owl. Aaron's definitely a morning person, so we ended up figuring out how to do that. For each couple or each crew, it will be different.
It's your circadian rhythm. I've been got up at 5:15 to go to work for 30 years, so getting up at 4 or 3 is not a lot different. Trying to be awake from midnight till 3, I can't do it.
Just the two of us, yes.
Yeah.
And so try not to be prescriptive with each other, right? Figure out what works for you. I will tell you that because being fatigued on a boat and being tired is probably the worst case that you can engage.
You're not a martyr, you're not a hero because you stayed up 24 hours.
Your decision making becomes questionable the more tired you get, and it takes about 2 days to get into the rhythm. So if you're struggling, because you say, oh, well, we've done one overnight, it's terrible. You're right, it is terrible. We did it one overnights a couple times coming across the Baltic, and they're awful because you just don't get into the rhythm. You don't have time.
So don't judge. You did one overnight and you hate it and you can't do it. No, it takes a few days to get into it.
That's right. You have to get really tired before you can go to sleep right after dinner. Okay, so in a fully stocked boat, when we crossed, I made all of the meals for the days that I thought we were going to be out +2. And I froze them, and then I could just stick them in the oven, and I didn't have to worry about sea state because I wasn't trying to boil water or do anything on the stove top. That's just how I chose to do it. There are many ways.
So we planned a 6.5 day journey. She froze 8 days worth of meals, and it turned out we needed them.
Yes.
We had enough fuel on board and 9 jerry cans that if we had a motor, we could have motored the whole way.
And then we had additional water. Again, just because if you get stuck out there too long, you're going to need extra water, right?
So it's about redundancies.
And we practice man over board drills
By
with
dropping stuff.
pails and all kinds of things. We have lots of pails, by the way, where we failed to save the man.
We donated them to Neptune.
And we did walk with tethers and jacklines in different sea states, right? Our boat. So there's a classification that's used quite a lot in Europe. Not so much, we didn't hear about it so much here, but boats are classified A through D, and it has to do with the wind and the waves that they're safe to withstand. So ours happens to be an A, and we shopped for that specifically when we were looking for the boat that we ended up buying.
That was another part of my getting prepared. I want a boat that's safe. I don't want a boat that has a big cockpit for a party. It was all about safety.
Many boats out that you see are Class B. Okay, that's, I would say, the lion's share of 40 footers and 40 to 50 footers. So when we were shopping, like I said before, we are engineers, so we were looking for structural safety. What is the hull integrity? How is it put together? What is the propulsion systems that they have? What is the mast made out of? We weren't interested in a nice new carbon fiber mast or boom. We didn't want anything that would shatter.
We didn't want a brand new Yanmar with a turbo. We got a tractor engine that's a Perkins.
That we can rebuild on the fly in the middle of the ocean if we needed to. There's and I'll show it to you, there's a website called sailboatdata.com that if you're looking at different things, let's say you're looking at a Jeanneau and a Beneteau and a whatever, you can compare. There are great data points that you can compare the boats because they all kind of look the same. right? Maybe the head's in a different location or whatever, but they kind of look the same. And then know the status of your boat. So we bought a used boat. So we tried to learn the history of it when we bought it. And then, like I said, we had it over COVID in Lake Erie, and we got intimately familiar with our boat. You'll want to do that.
Replaced all the plumbing, replaced the teak deck, rebuilt all the winches, tons of things. We had 2 years.
Right. Okay. So this is sailboatdata.com. This is just one small section, but this is the calculations that are accepted and well known in the industry, and all the definitions. All the definitions are given down here. I'm not going to go through this. This is really boring, but this happens to be for our boat, and you can compare that boats one to the other to see what you're looking for.
One of the safety strategies is heavier boats are more comfortable, but they're slower. So if I buy a light boat like this one, it goes faster.
But
it can go in 8 knots of wind, it can move. Versus a full keel boat is heavier, it won't bounce as much, but it's going to take you longer to get there. If there's a storm coming. So choices.
Yeah. By the way, compromises. I would like to emphasize compromises, because we have a light, fast boat. She's brilliant when it's beautiful, and she's hell on the water when it's not beautiful.
We don't race, but the perf rating on the boat is 69.
Okay. So getting you personally, and this is where it comes to what builds your own specific confidence, and what do you need to do to be able to throw off those lines, because that is an epic moment. I will tell you, I would have hugged the cleat. I really didn't want to let go.
Literally throwing the lines off in St. John's was
very difficult.
Hesitation.
So for me, I had to physically train and work on my balance and make sure that I was capable of managing the systems that I thought I would need to manage if something happened to him. So I was looking at the worst case, not he's in the cockpit and he can tail the halyard for the mainsail, me having to put up the mainsail all by myself or take it down, or furl in the Genoa if there was a storm coming. And so we worked out for months and trained for months. Yoga, standing on one leg. By the way, that's a great way to train, but at the end of the day, it's not the same. And then emotionally getting prepared. I found that it was... So we had contacted a group. There were 4 or 5 of us boats that were all going to go this Viking route.
It's been a WhatsApp group. We were all heading to men up in Halifax. We're all going to go.
But they went around the way that our weather router told us not to go, and so we ended up losing track of them for the journey across. But in Halifax Harbor, we met another buddy boat. St. John's, sorry. Yes, St. John's. We met another buddy boat who was going actually to do the Northwest Passage.
Crazy Frenchman who's aluminum boat with his Swiss girlfriend.
Yeah. So we became buddies with them, and we all set out and
stayed together.
And we made, I would say, 2/3 of the journey together before they kind of went more west to go up, and then we went more east. For me, that was great. I couldn't see them. We were still in the soup can of fog. They couldn't see us, but we could talk to each other on the beach.
And they were on AIS.
So we also talked to a lot of other people who had already crossed the Atlantic and could give us, the worst of the worst that they had seen, to try to give some perspective. And then we had people on the ground who were tracking us every single day and feeding back and forth.
So predict when life's breadcrumbs, if you turn that feature on, and our family could see where we were. And if something changed, like when we stopped at Hove 2, they said, what's going on?
Yeah, there was a lot of panic.
Emails. It's that dial-up speed is terrible, but we were emailing back and forth.
And then for me, again, it was knowledge, right? So we took the RYA course with the skipper on our boat, which was awesome. We are ICC certified.
Which you need in Europe.
Yeah, which you must have when you are in Europe. We were boarded a half a dozen times and asked for our ICCs multiple times when we were in the Baltic. There is a website called Nautic Ed. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but they have a phenomenal, they have a great online school my sister would like to join us in the Med. We have actually lots of people who want to join us now. Nobody wanted to join us on this trip. But I've suggested to her that she take a few classes like for crew, right? To understand
competent
just
crew, it's called, yeah.
just basics, like starboard and port. Just basic terminology and basic things about boats. Then we studied ice charts, tides, currents, sailing directions, and I'll show you examples of all of those as we continue.
So, excuse me, what's ICC?
International Certificate of Competency. It's like the Ontario Personal Watercraft Owners or whatever. It's a European version, but it's a little higher. Well, the answer is I don't know that you need it, but we got boarded 4 times at sea and then 3 times in the dock over in Europe, and everyone have asked us for it. So I don't know what would have happened if we didn't have it, but they all asked us. They want to see our ship's papers, our passports, and our sailing credentials, and the ICC work.
Did you try to pass off the Ontario Personal Watercraft card?
No, we didn't try. No, actually, I did use it one place. She had the ICC and mine was missing, so they accepted the personal
No, they
watercraft.
didn't. They said she's the captain.
Yeah, she was the captain.
Yeah. They just said he was
Just
crew.
like right there.
Her documents were passed.
Yeah.
And I am the captain. She's the admiral.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Who can hire and fire the captain.
Did we get that? We got that through the RYA. But I think that if you just Google it online, and that actually was the same gentleman from Kingston.
So when we did the 5-day RYA day skipper and me coastal
Yeah,
skipper,
it's Finn. Yes.
it's Finn. He gave us both at the same time.
Yes, and I'm not a cat test.
But I don't know if there's a practical to that. So not again, we did all the paper theoretical, but then we had to do the on water for the RYA stuff.
And then we've already talked a little bit about the weather, a weather router. I took more classes to understand meteorology and what to look for, and experience, right? So if you've been on the lakes, you can see clouds coming. You just have to pay attention. And it's funny now, because now when we're driving, it's like, oh, there's something coming at us and we're on the road, right? We're not even on the water.
As I helped my friend pull my race marks, and I said, it's going to be pouring in about 10 minutes. And he looks, 10 minutes later, he said, how do you know that?
So sailing directions. Sailing directions are put out by NOAA, and they are free, and they are for all of the major seagoing areas. This one happens to be the Baltic. It's divided into sections. So when you open the publication, you would go to the section that you're in. It is really dry reading, horribly dry reading, but it gives you all the information that you need to negotiate in that area. It also gives you VHF channels and all of the emergency phone numbers, websites, and email addresses. I find these to be a great service if you need them.
So they're at a commercial level with freighters and stuff. A lot of stuff deals up, but it's got military zones don't go in there. It's got a whole bunch of information. Better to know before you get there and somebody yells at you.
Yeah. Ice charts. So one might not think that you need ice charts, and you certainly don't if you're going to the Caribbean. But even in the Baltic, this is the Sea of Bothnia, and it was full of ice. So we researched to make sure that when we got into the Baltic Sea that we weren't going to run into any ice. And this is by month, and it's published. This one happens to be by Sweden, but they all
So around
Canada
Greenland,
does it here.
around Greenland, they're from Denmark. Denmark publishes them. DMI.de or DK, Denmark Meteorological Institute. And Canada does the ones off the Labrador and up towards Greenland. So every country where you're going, there will be ice charts.
If they have ice.
And they publish them every 3 days for the Canadian ones, I think. There's icebergs here, and there's 12 of them. It tells you.
We start our planning using pilot charts. So these are free and they're available online. This one happens to be for the North Atlantic. They are huge, right? So you can't get anything more like
Granular?
granular than this. There's a ton of information on them. It takes a while to learn how to read them. These blue little snowflake things tell you where the prevailing wind is coming from, the height of the wind, meaning
For that month, like that one she pointed out, in that month, most of the wind's going to be coming from the northwest, and the number, that's a percentage. Like the line is a percentage of time it's coming that direction. Southwest, sorry. Yeah. And the number of feathers on the air hole, each one of those feathers is 5 knots. It's the average wind.
Right. So in the red lines show you where currents are, or so this 10 relates to gales or whatever. Anyways, there's tons of information. And when we were over here in the Baltic, everybody says go around the Baltic counterclockwise. Well, for reasons that are, you'd have to listen to the Baltic speech, but we went around clockwise. And so the prevailing winds were against us, which just means that either you're going to sail into the wind instead of downwind sailing, or you're going to sit in a port for a while, depending on how harsh the winds are. Okay, so these are available. They're free online. You just download it, and then you just zoom in and get your information.
And they're every month. They're monthly.
They're monthly. So I've already started looking at it because our boat's in Belgium, and we're going to head south to Gibraltar. So when's the best month? When to go, what kind of winds are we going to be faced with, what kind of currents, etc. And it's at a high level, but it's still useful. And the next is tides and currents. And there's lots of presentations out there on tides and currents. I will tell you that it is not a big deal during the middle of the summer if you can hit 2 tide cycles, but tides come every 6 hours. And you want to leave on an ebb and you want to come in on a flood. Otherwise, you're going to add a lot of time and energy to your boating and maybe rough riding because you're going against the tide or against the current. Navionics. This is Navionics. It does a pretty good job of telling you this happens to be Cuxhaven. So we came out of the Kiel Canal. We had to do a severe left-hand turn and go into this little marina up here. In the meantime, the Ebb River, EBE, goes into Germany, and it goes in with a vengeance. It has a lot of current. So you can see, maybe you can't read them. A little top. This one, yes. So that is almost 3 knots of current coming against you if you were trying to turn and go across it. So when we went in, we had planned to go at slack tide. Current follows tide. It lags it. So slack tide wasn't the appropriate time to go in there. We should have waited another hour and a half or so and dealt with the tide, but not the current.
So we crab walked in.
Yeah, we crab walked in. To 2 major stone pillars going,
Yeah.
oh crap.
Hope nobody's coming out.
So we spend a lot of time dealing with tides and currents as you're in narrow areas. Territorial waters. These are all things that are part of what build your confidence about where you're going. This is territorial waters just mean about 12 miles off the coast. So when you get into a territorial water, they will, Coast Guards will come aboard your boat, they'll ask for your credentials, that kind of stuff.
Economic zones.
Yeah, and then the economic zone. So the economic zone is 200 miles offshore, but because the Baltic Sea is not that big, it just kind of goes right through the middle and all the countries split it.
The issue we had this year was going from Lithuania to Poland through
Russia, yeah.
in our U.S. flag boat.
But, so these also, you'll know when you're getting in and out of territorial waters, and that should make you more confident if you're in a territory that you feel safe. Okay? When you're sailing in territories you feel safe. You have to beware of military training zones. These are all things you just learn and get prepared for as you're going through the different water conditions. And we saw a lot of those for the first time in the Baltic Sea.
Off of Poland and Germany, big zones, and there's a website you go to, which ones are they using today, and if they're using it, you stay out of it. We watched a powerboat who didn't do that. He got this really firm direction from a German warship. He contacted him, our boat's going to Northern Breeze, like this is German warship, A362, Northern Breeze, come in. Repeated it like 3 times. Northern Northern Breeze, the other sailboats, the other powerboat suggested to us, it said, you will immediately take a 90-degree starboard turn and head out of the military zone. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so they're not rude, but they are forceful, right? They're shooting things off, and I don't know whether they're loaded or not loaded, but I don't want to know either. So we're about to leave the preparedness. These are all things that we use to get prepared. Do we have any questions? Or we use cruising guides. There are multiple cruising guides. There are guides that tell you about the waters you're in. There are guides that tell you about the marinas that you can go to. I highly recommend that you also use local websites for weather. In Scandinavia, the Norwegians kind of rule the weather, and they have incredible guides for weather. You can actually pinpoint your port, and you can see what's happening even in the islands. So these are all things that help you get more confident as you're going in and out of waters. And I think the scariest thing about going into foreign waters or going into blue water is what you don't know. So these things all can tell you and forecast for you things that you didn't know before. Any questions or thoughts? No? All right, let's go to risks. So we talked a little bit about physical limitations and injuries. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Risks with the weather and boat failures. So talked about strength and leverage, right? Like, it takes me forever to put up the mainsail, sitting in the cockpit grinding a winch. I would rather be at the mast, pulling on the halyard and leveraging all my body weight. But if the weather is not conducive to do that, then you're in the cockpit wrenching along, and you better have the sustainability to be able to do that for how many ever minutes it takes you to get your mainsail up. Flexibility and balance. You have to do the crab walk sometimes to the front of the boat. We have wrapped our halyard and our head sail more times than I would like to admit. We were in Halifax, East River, so we got stuck and it delayed. We put a wind generator on our boat, and so we wanted to get going. So instead of doing the shakedown that everybody should do when they start sailing for the first time in a season, we didn't do that. We're like, oh, it's okay, we're just going around to Halifax, and it's just around this bend, right, from one bay to the next. We didn't get out of East Rivers Bay, and we wrapped the head sail.
So we had to unwrap it manually. 15, 20 knots of wind.
Yep, which is dancing on the helm, trying to help him as he's trying to swing the sail around. So you have to be able, together or with your crew, figure out how you're going to manage that. Maybe it's just dropping it, but unfortunately when your halyard's wrapped at the top, you can't drop your sail either. So you have to be able to do something different. We talked about exhaustion a little bit. It is exhausting on a boat. It's exhausting on a boat from the boredom perspective of sitting there for hours on end, as well as the work when something catastrophic happens. And the lack of sleep. The boat is very noisy. You will get used to it, but it is noisy. Like when we come home in the winter, I can't sleep because it's like there's no, I have to turn on noise, like white noise on my phone, because there's no noise in the house. It's terrible.
The noises on the boat, they're important, because when they change, that means something's changing. So now at home, I hear the refrigerator turn on at 2 in the morning. I hear the sump pump run. I hear the furnace come on.
Yeah. And then what do you do when 1 out of 2 of you are injured if there's only 2? We used to have a system on our boat where the person on deck would start the engine if they needed help.
Because the person sleeping would wake up.
Right. Or they'd rev the engine if the motor happened to be running. But when I was down in the cabin and I couldn't get out...
There's a squall coming, full sails up. Hey, Maria, I need some help. Start the engine. If she doesn't come up, she's not very helpful.
He was really angry.
But then she had broken bones,
So I got to buy.
So now we have Milos instead.
So you've seen probably the marriage... I always get this
Marriage Savers.
Thank you. I always get it
headsets,
wrong.
right?
It's like, is it divorce savers? Marriage savers. They have them here at the show. They're headsets that go on. Ours are hands-free.
The little pucks, hands-free
Pucks?
walkie-talkies.
That they actually attach. You can attach them many different ways. They can be on a lanyard. You can tie them to your life vest, or your life vest, and they're great because they will pick up your voice without you pushing a button.
So if you're pulling a line or grinding a winch or steering a boat, you can just talk.
And you can hear each other.
A couple of things. What's the range of them? And how
2 kilometers. The problem we had was when
that would be
I don't know how they do it in the water though. The problem with 2 kilometers, the problem we had with it was they have a proximity. If you're close together, they assume you can talk to each other. So they actually didn't work the first time we tried them because we were about this far apart. But she was down below and I was up top. Couldn't hear each other. You can turn off the proximity.
Well, they fixed that in the software.
They fixed it in the software. So yeah, this is a brand new product in 22. We got it in 23.
So they originally.
So what was your other question?
No, just
Yes.
so how long? Like you charge them, and how long do they last? So they're on all the time.
They are. They're in a sleep mode until they hear your voice, right, or something.
So put them on mute. They say the battery lasts 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
But we don't sleep that long.
Right. Yeah. Nobody is.
So that wouldn't probably help, but we have the MOBs, so we know they work because they set out the
I went
alarm.
over.
Chart plotter started screaming, the VHF started screaming when her MOB device went in the water this year. And all the boats around us in the locks, all their VHF radios alarms started going off. So that would be the main report. So we have the MOBs, which are if somebody in 25 miles can come help, and we have the EPIRB for the boat and the PLBs, which is the satellite, which tells the Coast Guard. Coast Guard's going to be a while, right? Especially when we're way out there. With the MOB, it'll wake me up.
You should coordinate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we highly recommend the Milos. We like them. They are continuing to develop the software, right? They were originally designed for biking, like
Skiing, bicycles. Yeah.
right. And then we also have the Roam device, which is not so much that it helps between the two of you, but it has a lot of alarms on it, and it works off of a cellular signal.
So our boat's in Belgium right now, and I can tell you the humidity and the temperature that the bilge pump is not running
Right.
is because this device is on. If the bilge pump switch goes on, she gets a text message and I get an email.
So we get, and it actually has a built-in anchor alarm just for the sake of, that was kind of interesting. So I set it, and I didn't remember that I set it, and then we took off, and my phone went berserk and the alarm on the boat. So not only does it set off an alarm on your phone, but it also sets off an audible alarm in the boat.
So there are a lot of remote monitoring systems for your boat. There's many. This company in Vancouver does a really great one. This is $350.
250 US, yeah.
Is there a subscription?
$5 a month because it uses the cell network.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be hooked up to the Marine's Wi-Fi system. You know.
So if I wasn't such a mother about our boat, we wouldn't pay for the subscription while it was on the hard necessarily, right? But I like to know what's happening with the boat every morning and every night. So you pay.
There's 2 more hookups we haven't hooked up. I'm going to hook them up when we go back. I'm going to put one on the ignition system.
Because we don't have a key. Anybody can start our boat and take it.
Right. So if somebody starts their boat, I'll know. And for the hatch,
Yeah.
put a switch on the hatch so somebody opens a hatch. We'll know.
Right.
Yeah. It's got 4 inputs,
Will you be able to do anything without it?
except call the boatyard. And our friend Fred over there, but you'd have to have an op.
Weather, we've already talked about pretty much everything that's on here. Again, there are models out there. You can use the models, Windy, Wind Finder, Predict Wind. But for the local situations that are happening wherever you are, use the local weather. So Environment Canada, right? And another clue is if you are in dock and the fishermen aren't going out, you probably shouldn't go out either. They are a really good visual clue. Bolt failures. We've just about had all of these, at some point in our experiences. So redundancy. And these are the areas that we think are most important for redundancy on your boat if you're going to carry spare parts. Propulsion, so anything about your prop, anything about your sails. Steering, make sure you have...
Emergency tiller.
Thank you, emergency tiller.
And a way to secure
Use
it.
my dictionary. Charts, because you do lose power, or your chart plotters go out, or your GPS goes down and you need to be able to figure it out.
So we have big battery bricks that you charge up, several of them. So if we lost the electricity on the boat, your cell phone still has GPS. Our tablet still has GPS. It's still moving way up off those battery bricks.
Spare
So
rig.
you get hit by lightning, you lose your power. You still have GPS. Still no radar.
Spare rigging, that's lines, as well as this year our turnbuckles for our standing rigging broke, and
Cracked. They didn't look like that.
okay, in my mind they broke, and I was not willing to go a whole lot further with cracked turnbuckles. I did one too many classes in steel, I think. So and have alarms and warnings set on your boat, right? So you know when it's high water down in the bilge goes off, or know when the voltage is dropping, or your fuel's running low. These things are important because you're actually out there sailing, whether you're motoring or sailing, and you kind of become numb to these things. So a warning is helpful. It really is helpful. Provisioning, make sure you have enough fuel, food, and water. Not just water in your tanks. Our water tanks got contaminated this year, and had we not had gallons of water in bottles on the boat, it would have been difficult.
We always have a couple of gallon jugs of water.
Because even though we were going from port to port to port, it took us 2 countries to find bottled water.
It wasn't this big.
Yeah, that wasn't just like a 12-ounce bottle of water. And then electricity. Electricity is important on your boat.
We have 3 sources. If one fails or 2 fails, we still have a third.
That's right.
The alternator, the wind generator, and the solar.
So yeah, it's not just the journey, right? And give it a try. If you have some questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Everybody gets to this point differently and gets secured enough to let them go. You can hail places on VHF. They may or may not answer you. Take small trips to get started. Go for 3 or 4 days. You don't have to go 2,000 miles across the ocean to get a feel for it and see if you like it, right? Checking in and out of ports can be trying. There are a couple websites, Noon Site, No Foreign Land. They are moderately accurate. They're moderately accurate. We'll just leave it at that. And paying as you go into other countries when you get there is difficult. Foreign currency is difficult. You don't have a bank card in their country, that's difficult. So
they have an app to pay for the berth. You're signed onto the app, you gotta put in your credit card, it needs a European credit card.
So I will tell you this year, because we are going to be in mainland Europe for the most part, we will buy euros at the train station. Best place in Canada to get money exchanged is at the train station.
At least in Windsor, where we live.
And we will go.
It's like
we'll
a half
take,
a percent.
Yeah, we'll take the euros over, and if we need to exchange them for pounds or zlotys or some other weird currency that they have, they pretty much all use euros, and we'll exchange them at a decent price in Europe. All right, so you can do it, right? Be redundant, get your confidence up, give it a trial, take a couple trial runs, get the right boat that makes you confident, and give it a whirl. It's worth it. It's worth it. And I went along on his dream, and I'm living the dream with him now. So it's worth it.
Yeah, the icebergs, sailing with the icebergs on a sunny day, they're just magnificent. The fog, going in the Outer Hebrides along the coast of Scotland, we saw the dolphins, not just the ones swimming with us. By the way, they turn and they look up at you.
Yeah, they're playing with you. It's a race.
We saw them circle a school of fish there must have been about 40 dolphins, and they're all jumping. And then the northern gannets start dive bombing in between the dolphins. They're also eating those fish. It was like, Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and it's right there, right? It's right there. And the seals off of Pictou, we anchored on, and the seals come over and started barking at us. Like you anchor, you have a beer to make sure that your anchor is holding. The seals come over and they're starting banging their tails and they're barking at us. Great big seals. What's going on? About 15 minutes later, we figured it out. Then they started circling the fish behind us. We were in their kitchen. So they then did the same thing. Got a bunch of fish, a school of fish in the circle, and they started eating. It's amazing, this trip.
Whales. We both really like the wildlife, and we were in Cuxhaven where I showed you the pictures of the currents, and a mama seal would come and bring her pup and put him on the dock.
On the ramp.
Launch ramp. For 4 or 5 hours when she went out,
fishing.
and then she'd come back and get it and take the pup back, and she did that every morning. Every morning she brought the pup in.
He'd pose for pictures.
Yeah, he was a cute little thing. So we are sailing Northern Breeze. You can find videos if you want to see what it was like preparing and crossing. And we have Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram. And if you have any questions or you just want to chat, you can email us at Sailing Northern Breeze.
When you made your trip from Halifax, I guess, to Greenland, what kind of temperatures were you dealing with overnight?
So the question was, what is the temperatures that we dealt with as we went from, it was actually St. John's, but to Greenland. And it was cold. So we left East River, and we did not have a pup tent. We had no enclosures on our boat. We had a Dodger in the front and a Bimini. And that's why in St. John's, I made the pup tent, because it was so cold. The water temperature, pardon?
No heater down below either?
Yeah, we did have a heater. It's a bit of a blow dryer.
Turns out it wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So when we ran the heater all day in Greenland, we'd get the boat up to 15 degrees inside. The water temperature there is 3 degrees, so your hull is 3 degrees. The side effect of that was every time you exhale, your breath condensed on the hull. So we had a mold problem too.
So, if you're going to do this, invest in a $50 heated vest from Amazon. It is the greatest thing since sliced toast. It's kind of like having a heating pad when you're sitting there at night shift or whatever on your shift, and it will really keep you comfortable as you sail all night long. And you know what? I've used it when it hasn't been 3 degrees either, because it is very comfortable, and there's 3 settings. And
So
Kenimoto.
We got frost one night, but generally it was single digits at night. One afternoon, I think it got up to 12 or 14 degrees, but that was it for Greenland.
There are these yellow sheets, by the way, that they ask if you would mind giving us feedback. We would appreciate it. So with the boat show.
Yeah, my question was on the heating. What kind of heating you had?
So we bought an Eberspacher diesel heater. The boat had that originally, but it was old and broken, and the ductwork was already there. We had a 3,000 watt one, and we replaced it. They no longer had that, a 2,000 or 4,000, so we bought the 2,000. That was a mistake. We should have bought the 4,000 one. But it burns diesel. You don't even know how much. You can't even measure the amount of diesel it burns. It's so small. And it heated the boat.
Mine was about your boat. You said it's registered American.
Marie's American. I'm Canadian.
So is that so it's in both your names, I assume.
Well, I can't own a boat in the U.S. So we
Okay,
actually had to
that
make.
was- that was gonna be my question.
We actually had to set up a company in Rhode Island.
Okay.
I own 49%. She owns 51%.
So it's not a problem when you go to a foreign country because it's foreign registered and you're not.
I can't be the captain. She is.
Okay.
Generally.
Can you buy it? The reason I'm asking is because I was looking at some boats in the States. Can I buy a boat down in the States and change the registration to Canada?
Yes, you can. And we thought about that because Canadian flag sometimes is more accepted than the U.S. flag. First off, you have to bring it to Canada to do that. So if you bought it in the States and took it to the Bahamas, you can't.
Right.
You actually have to land in Canada. And then you got to pay the HST. Rhode Island, it turns out, we didn't know. When we bought the boat in Rhode Island, they have 0 sales tax on boats. So there was 2 reasons not to bring it up to Canada and register it. One was I had to pay 13%.
So, but a Canadian can't own
Cannot own a U.S. registered boat. That's correct. So you could find an American down there that you really like a lot.
You should make a slide on that.
I think there's some of them leaving right now.
Traveler's checks. Have you ever tried using American traveler checks?
No, we haven't. I'm old enough.
Express.
Right. I'm old enough to remember having to use traveler's checks because there was nothing else to be able to do, and I didn't really enjoy them then, so I have not tried that again.
They're
So
not
there are
widely-
credit cards. There are credit cards with no foreign exchange fees. I have a Scotiabank Passport. She's got a Chase one. Does the same. It's 22% interest credit card, but there's no foreign exchange fees on it. Just
And
gotta
we
pay it
use
off.
those. We use those exclusively, to be honest, and we only run into issues if they don't take a foreign credit card, right? That's the time,
But retail generally takes it. It's not been an issue.
right? It's the marinas. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and